Hi, my name is Alec and my topic is going to be on the federal minimum wage. The federal minimum wage is the minimum amount of money employers can pay employees, which is currently $7.25 per hour. States have the ability to create their own minimum wages, and many have set theirs higher than the federal because of the different forms of inflation they're experiencing in their regions. However, some people are still dissatisfied and want the federal government to step in and raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour across the United States. Proponents of this proposition believe that it will help the economy grow and lead to people being pulled out of poverty, but exactly the opposite will occur. My proposition is that if the federal minimum wage is increased to $15 an hour, detriment will be caused to the American economy and the people. And I will specifically show that by demonstrating how it causes detriment to businesses, the lower working class, and teenagers. So from the business perspective, companies will be forced to lay off workers because of the increase in labor costs. The Congressional Budget Office projected that a minimum wage increase from $7.25 to $10.10 will result in a loss of 500,000 jobs. And that's just from $7 to about $10. So you can imagine how much larger that figure would be if it's $7 to $15. Additionally, companies will have to close due to their labor costs. In this case, I'm going to use the example of Walmart. Forbes magazine reported that state minimum wage increases resulted in several Walmart stores having to shut down and the cancellation of stores that were supposed to open. And this was just state minimum wages. If this was a federal minimum wage change, there would have been several more closures in almost every state. And it's not just businesses that are significantly impacted. In fact, it hurts the people, it hurts the financial status of the people that are supposed to benefit from the increase in federal minimum wage, and that is the lower working class. First, they're going to see a decline in earned income. The Federal Reserve Bank of Cleveland found that although low-income workers see wages increase when the minimum wage is raised, their hours and employment decrease. So that combination actually results in them earning less money. And then on top of that, the price of consumer goods will increase. Because business owners have more labor costs, that means they're going to have to pass on those costs to consumers. And as Purdue reported, raising minimum wage will result in a price increase of 4.3%. So not only is the lower working class going to have to worry about not making as much money, but now their products they're buying are going to be more expensive. Surprisingly, even though the lower working class is going to be significantly harmed by this, there's actually going to be disproportionate harm done to teenagers. And this is because teenagers will not be able to find jobs whatsoever, and they're going to be less likely to obtain upward mobility. Businesses, as of right now, do not give many jobs to teenagers or those businesses that are offering minimum wage jobs because they have less experience, and the minimum wage in certain states and for some states, the federal minimum wage is too much, and they won't hire them. So if that is increased to $15 an hour, that will just make the situation worse. And teens that experience that sort of financial status trouble early on in their youth are going to be more likely to struggle later on. The Employment Policies Institute say that those experiencing unemployment at an early age have years of lower earnings and increased likelihood of unemployment ahead of them. And it's not just their financial status that will be harmed. It has been proven that teenagers will actually be harmed in terms of their education as well. More teenagers will be less educated because, as the American Enterprise Institute has noted, students that come from poor families with limited skills are attracted to the higher minimum wage and drop out of school. And there's actually no guarantee they'll even get the job in the first place because, as I said before, there's an issue with businesses hiring them. But because it's so high, they feel as though that's a better opportunity, when in reality that's going to cause detriment to them later on in life. And the Industrial and Labor Relations Review stated that a long-term 10% increase in earnings of low-skilled workers could decrease high school enrollment by as much as 5 to 7%. And that's a 10% increase. The $7 to $15 is much more than 10%, so that percentage would be a lot higher. So overall, raising the minimum wage will hurt the economy and the American people because of the specific detriment it will cause to businesses, the lower working class, and teenagers.
All right, Alec, a couple things about the beginning of the speech. The proposition is identified, but it does have a kind of a dependent clause on it and some language that you use that's a little awkward. You want to simplify that. It's not that complicated. You could just say increasing the federal minimum wage to $15 an hour would have substantial detriments to society or something like that, and that would have been fine. Yours was just a little bit more complex than it needed to be. Going the opposite direction, though, the secondary points that you preview in the speech are not complex because they aren't claims, they are just topic areas, businesses, workers, and teens. Now, when you get to the body of the speech, those secondary points do end up having claims attached to them, but it would be better if those claims were previewed at the beginning of the speech. So that's just the structural stuff at the beginning of the speech. In the body of the speech, everything is signposted clearly. You do have clear labels, and you give us declarative statements on those points as you're presenting them, so I thought that that was solid. There's usually a pretty good explanation on each point as you are presenting it, and there's good data for the most part on some of the points. There are a couple of places where I think some of the information need to be clearer. The Walmart closing, for instance, it sounded like it was a Forbes quote. It was a little abstract. It sounded more like a paraphrase of what they were describing. If they had particular incidents or they had some numbers of stores that closed, I think you ought to quote it more directly. There was another source, I think it was on the next point. It sounded like the source was Purdue. I'm not sure if it's supposed to be a repeat of something that you said earlier, or if it's a study done by Purdue University, or there's somebody named Purdue, I don't know who that is, that talked about price increases and the potential problems that are going to be going on there. And again, there's nothing, the information I thought was good, the source citation on that was a little bit problematic. The rest of it, though, was, I thought, very solid. You did an excellent job citing the information that you're citing on the other points. So those are just a couple of minor points. Those are places where there were problems. For the most part, I mean, I heard the Federal Reserve, I heard the AEI, there was a good quote on the long-term problems that you're talking about. There was an assertion on businesses generally not giving jobs to teens, and I think you needed a little bit better evidence on that. But the notion that teens, for instance, would have a harder time, or, for example, if the wages went up, that it would incentivize them to not pursue their education, well, you had a clear quote on that particular point. You've got a little bit more time, so I think you could probably substantiate that first point a little bit more and maybe clarify with some additional evidence on that third point. There's a very good summary at the end of the speech, so we know what your point is. And so all the stuff that was a little bit problematic at the beginning mostly gets solved at the end of the speech. So you're on the right track. Just a couple of places here and there where you need to fix things. All right, thank you.